Welcome to Cooking Wild. Today we are making venison chili with jalapeno cheddar cornbread, and for dessert we are having apple pie French toast rolls. We are going to pair that with the Marshall This Land Lager, so stick around because we're cooking wild. So on our venison chili, I've got everything prepped and ready to go. We are going to put in 4 pounds of ground venison. Of course, if you're not wanting to make that big of a pot of chili, you can cut it in half, and 2 pounds will make a pretty good sized pot. But we have 4 pounds of the ground venison. I have 2 full-size cans of tomato sauce, and then I have 2 cans of diced tomatoes and green chilies. I've got the regular. You can go with mild, or you can even go with hot, depending on your preference and how much heat you want. And then for my seasonings, I just have my chili seasoning. That's just a pre-packaged seasoning. If you don't want to use that, of course you can make your homemade with your chili powder and all of that. But I've got my chili seasoning, one of my very favorite seasonings, and I use it with almost everything that I cook. And it's Creole seasoning. Then I have cayenne pepper, and once again, this is optional on whether you want heat or not, if you want to put the cayenne pepper. Onion powder, garlic powder, I have minced garlic, and I have minced jalapeno. You can add or omit any of the ingredients. The jalapeno, if you don't want the hot, just take it out. It's just relatively simple recipe, just dump it in and stir it up. So I've got it all ready, and we're gonna head over to the stove and get it on. Okay, so I've got my pot, and we're going to put it on medium heat, and I'm gonna add some oil first to the pot. Venison is a very, very lean meat, so a lot of the times you have to add extra fat into it. But right now I'm just adding some vegetable oil in the bottom of my pot, and I'm going to add my jalapeno peppers and my minced garlic. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of stir and let those kind of break down and brown just a little bit. When they start becoming really fragrant, then we will go ahead and put in our ground venison. So we'll give those just a minute or two just to get going, and we'll add our meat. Okay, so now we have sat here and kind of simmered and sauteed our garlic and jalapeno, and it's starting to smell really fragrant, and bits of it's turning a little bit brown. You can also use fresh jalapeno in this. I just opted for straight out the jar just because it's easier. So we've got that ready, and now we're gonna go ahead and add our venison. And I've got 4 pounds of the venison. I'm just gonna add it straight into the bottom of our pot. And like I said, this is a really lean meat, so I wouldn't be surprised if throughout cooking I may have to add a little fat to it. I'm gonna go ahead and stir this around, and then I'll go ahead and add some more seasonings to the meat, and we'll let it cook down. Okay, got that stirred up, and I'm going to add some onion powder. And I typically don't measure when I'm adding my seasonings because so many people are different with their preference. So usually I just say, add to, to taste. Because I didn't saute onions with my garlic and peppers, I'm gonna add quite a bit of onion powder to give it some flavor. I would say that was probably about 1.5 tablespoons. This is garlic powder. I'm not gonna use as much because we used some fresh minced garlic in the beginning. So I'm just gonna, a couple of good sized pinches of garlic. Now these two here are optional. This was your cayenne pepper. This is gonna give it a little bit of heat. I'm not gonna add a lot just because my kids are picky when it comes to heat. So we're just gonna do like one small pinch. You can omit this if you don't want as much heat. Like I said before, this is one of my very favorite seasonings to cook with. I put it in almost everything that I make, and it's just Creole seasoning. It's pretty salty, so I'm not putting any salt in our chili because it's gonna be replaced in this. And I'm just gonna do a couple of good-sized pinches. And then last but not least, we have our chili seasoning. Today I'm just using packaged chili seasoning. You can make your own, however, but this is just the packaged chili seasoning, and it's 2 packages. And I'm gonna just go ahead and put that in there. I try to go with what's easy and convenient when at all possible. So I'm gonna continue to stir this and let the meat brown up. And then once the meat is good and brown, I will go ahead and add the rest of our ingredients. So it'll take a few minutes to get this browned up, and then we'll be back to add the rest of our ingredients. Okay, so we have our venison cooked down and brown. And while I was cooking it down, I did drizzle some more oil into it just because it's so lean. I don't want it sticking and burning. So we've got it browned down. And I'm gonna go ahead and add my tomatoes and green chilies. And I'm gonna stir these in real well. I've got my heat reduced to a very low simmer. And I am going to put the lid on these and let them simmer for a little bit to break the tomato down. And then after the tomato is broke down, then we'll go ahead and add the tomato sauce. So I've got that good and stirred up. And I'm gonna put the lid on a very low simmer to let the tomatoes break down into the chili. Okay, so I'm gonna take the lid off and check to see how well my tomatoes are broken down. And it looks like they're doing their job. So the last thing I'm gonna add is our tomato sauce. I always wait to add it last because I slowly add it to get the chili to the consistency that I like. So I don't ever just recommend just dumping a full measured amount in there because you don't want it to be too soupy or juicy. And as you can see, it's got a pretty good consistency right now. So I don't think we're gonna have to add all of it, but we'll see. So I'm just gonna slowly add a little. Stir it around. Get it good and incorporated. Also, depending on your preference, you can add beans to your chili. A lot of people put it in their chili. If I'm making a big pot of chili and we're gonna put it on Frito chili pies or other things like that, I usually leave the beans out. But I've made it both ways. So if you're going to add beans to your chili, just after you get your tomato sauce incorporated, that's when you would go ahead and add your beans. You don't want to add them real early on in because it's cooking down and your beans will start to break down and turn to mush if you put them in early. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of this. It's actually gonna turn out perfectly, I think, as far as the measured amount. So this was 2 full cans of tomato sauce to 4 pounds of the ground venison. Obviously, if you're using ground beef and you're wanting, or venison, and you're wanting to make a smaller pot, you would just cut the recipe in half, and that should work. So we've got the tomato sauce all stirred in. This is where I do my tasting, because like I said, I cook a whole lot just by tasting it, and then I'll add more seasonings if I feel like it needs more. So this right here is where I'll just pull a little bit out and put it into a bowl, taste it to see if I need to add any. Primarily, I taste it to see how spicy it is, or if I want to add more spice to it, more kick to it. So I'm just gonna pull a little bit out, and then I'm gonna just give it a taste here in just a minute when it cools off, and see if I need to add any more or not. If I do, I will just sprinkle it in, and we're gonna go ahead and keep the heat at a really low simmer. I'm gonna put the lid back on and let it simmer another 30 or 45 minutes, and just check it and stir it periodically. These tomatoes will continue to break down, and as we're doing this and waiting on our chili to finish, we're gonna go ahead and start our jalapeno cornbread to go with it.
You are called to be bold. You have a right to the best wireless service, high-speed internet, and customer service at a price you can feel good about. At Bravado Wireless, we know this, and that's why we put you and your community first. We are owned and operated right here in Eastern Oklahoma. We live where you live. We proudly connect you to your family, friends, and business partners wherever they are. Dallas, Seattle, Taipei, Toronto, and anywhere else in the world. We are Bravado Wireless. We believe in the power of connection.
Other wireless companies need 4-page brochures to explain plans that are too complicated and cost way too much. We are not like the others. We are Bravado Wireless. We offer 1 line of unlimited talk, text, and 4G LTE data for only $40 per month, with no minimum number of lines and no hidden fees. This is your year to be bold, connect fast at the best price. We live where you live, and we are proud to be a part of your community here in Eastern Oklahoma. We are Bravado Wireless, and we believe in the power of connection.
So next, to go with our chili, we are going to make jalapeno cheddar cornbread. I have all of the ingredients out. First, we're going to start with 2 cups of our cornmeal mix. I usually buy the bagged cornmeal mix that already has the flour and everything else in it, just for simplicity, but you can make it from scratch if you prefer that way. So we're going to add 2 cups of our yellow cornmeal mix, 1.5 cups of milk, we're going to add 2 large eggs, two tablespoons of oil. Go ahead and mix that together real well, and then we will add our jalapenos and cheese. Let's get this mixed up real well first. Like I said, if you want to avoid a lot of heat, you can reduce the amount of jalapenos or just omit them altogether if you prefer your cornbread plain. You just want to have a few little jalapeno pieces in every bite. So that looks good. And this is our grated cheddar cheese. And I'm not going to add all of this, I don't think, either. Maybe about 1/2 cup of it. The more cheese you add to it, the more moist it keeps your bread, and we don't want a ton of moisture in our cornbread. So we've got our cheese and our jalapenos in there, and we are going to pour this into our pan. I have this cute little cast iron cornbread pan, and it just is little molds of a corn cob. It's already seasoned, but on this pan especially, I'll go ahead and spray it with Pam or kitchen spray, cooking spray, just so my little corn cobs pop out more easily. So I'm gonna see if I can't pour directly from this. If you overfill it or whatever, you can just wipe off the excess. It's no big deal. My mom had one of these pans growing up when she would make cornbread. I always loved to eat the little cornbread over the regular. So it's just kind of brings back fond memories of being a kid and eating my mama's cooking. And I'll take a paper towel in a minute and clean that up before I put it in the oven. And for the rest of what we have reserved, I'm just gonna put in a smaller cast iron and bake it that way. And we'll just cut these pieces out in regular cornbread triangular pieces. I prefer to cook my cornbread in a cast iron. I'm not sure if it's just because that's the way my mom always done it, but to me it just tastes better. It crisps up on the outside and it just tastes better. So we are gonna put these in the oven, bake them, and by the time they get out and done, our chili should be ready and we'll be ready to eat.
You are called to be bold. You have a right to the best wireless service, high-speed internet, and customer service at a price you can feel good about. At Bravado Wireless, we know this, and that's why we put you and your community first. We are owned and operated right here in Eastern Oklahoma. We live where you live. We proudly connect you to your family, friends, and business partners wherever they are. Dallas, Seattle, Taipei, Toronto, and anywhere else in the world. We are Bravado Wireless. We believe in the power of connection. You are called to be bold, to connect in your home, to your community, and to the world. From your land, we are Bravado Wireless. We are your high-speed internet provider based right here in Eastern Oklahoma. With the latest technology, we offer coverage in more underserved areas than ever, with 4G LTE speeds and no installation needed. We're faster and more reliable than the competition, and at $59.99 a month, we're more affordable too. Bravado Wireless. We believe in the power of connection.
So now that our chili and cornbread is done, we are going to start with the dessert. Today we are going to make apple pie French toast rolls. And what we're going to do is, let me go through the list of ingredients first. So the recipe calls for 12 pieces of white bread, preferably the squared pieces versus the round. We have got 2 eggs, 3 tablespoons of whole milk, 1/3 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, some vanilla, and apple pie filling. Now the apple pie filling, because we're gonna have to put it inside of these rolls, typically apple pie filling, it comes with the apple still like quartered up, pretty good sized pieces. And it's not gonna fit real well in our rolls. So what I did was I put our apple pie filling in a Ziploc baggie, and I just used my hands and just went through and mashed up the apples so they're in little pieces, and then I'll use that to pipe into our rolls later. So the first step we're gonna do is we're gonna cut the crust off the rolls. I always use a pizza cutter just because it's easy and you can just whip through it real quick. We're gonna cut the crust off of all 12 pieces. I'll cut another one. And then we'll kind of show you what we're gonna do here. You just want your deals to be square. And then the next step, after you get all of your pieces cut like this, you're just going to use a rolling pin and roll your pieces out flat. This is gonna serve as our roll. So I'm gonna finish cutting the crust off of all of our bread. Then we'll get them all rolled flat. Once they're rolled flat, that is when we will put our pie filling in. About 2 tablespoons is what we're going to try to put in there. You're just going to have to judge what fits into your bread. And the next we're going to go ahead and make our egg mixture. Just 2 eggs. Gonna add our milk. We're just gonna do a dash of vanilla. Just about a half of a lid full is what I did. Whisk this up. And this is what we are going to dip our apple rolls in. Set this aside for just a second and I'll show you what else we're going to do with this. Is we are going to do our cinnamon and sugar mixture. So I'm just going to mix my cinnamon and sugar good. And after we dip our rolls in the egg mixture, then we're going to roll it in the cinnamon sugar and it'll stick to that egg mixture. Then I'm just going to pan fry it in some butter. And then we're going to roll it again in the cinnamon sugar when it comes out of the pan hot. Okay, so we've got our skillet nice and hot. Melted some butter down in it. And I am going to place our rolls seam side down into the hot skillet. So they've been browning on the other side and it's all gooey and bubbly. I'm gonna pull them out, let them sit right there just a minute, long enough that they'll cool off just a tad so I can roll them in the cinnamon sugar for the second time. How nice and brown those are. They look wonderful. We hope you enjoyed this episode. To view more, go to bravadowireless.com. I'm Amber, and we've been cooking wild.